My name is Elise Porter. I was 34 years old the day my sister decided a family picnic was the perfect stage to humiliate me. You know the kind of afternoon I mean. Everybody is smiling too hard. Everybody is chewing too slowly. Everybody can feel something ugly coming. But nobody says a word because they want a show more than they want peace. That was the air around the folding tables by the lake. Burgers were still smoking on the grill. Kids were running through wet grass. My family was pretending we were the kind of people who only gathered for laughter. Then my sister Talia Porter stood up, tapped her plastic cup with a fork, and smiled in that bright, polished way that always looked sweet from far away and cruel up close. "Here's to Elise," she said. "The one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter." My mother, Nora Porter, laughed first. Not a nervous laugh. A real laugh. The kind that tells you she enjoyed it. My father, Grant Porter, looked down and smiled into his plate. A couple of cousins followed because that is what weak people do when cruelty wears a confident face. I picked up my drink, stood slowly, and looked straight at Talia. "Then let's raise one," I said, "to the desperate one who borrows from the person she mocks, lies about it in front of family, and still expects applause." The whole yard went still. Her smile dropped. My father finally looked up. My mother went pale. And my sister, for the first time in her life, looked scared instead of superior. "Before we go further, be honest. If your sister mocked you in front of everyone and your mom laughed, what would you do? Comment stay quiet if you would swallow it to keep the peace. Or comment clap back if you would respond on the spot." Talia recovered fast because that was one of her favorite talents. She could fall on her face in public and still make it look like the floor offended her. She laughed lightly and said, "Wow, Elise. So we're doing this. At a family picnic." The tone was soft, but the message was clear. I was the problem for answering, not her for starting. That had been the family pattern for years. She cut. I bled. And then everyone asked why I was making such a mess. "You started it," I said. "Don't act shocked because I finally answered." My mother leaned forward with that breathy voice she used whenever she wanted to smooth things over without actually correcting anyone. "Girls. Not here. Not here. Not now. Not in front of people." That was always the rule when Talia crossed a line. The problem was never the wound. The problem was always that somebody might see it. Talia shrugged like she was bored. I was making a joke. Then she pointed at me and added, "You always do this. You turn everything into drama because you're insecure." Some cousins looked away. Others watched with the kind of fascination people usually reserve for car wrecks. I set my cup down on the table before I crushed it in my hand. "A joke," I said. "You borrowed $3,000 from me in February because your commission check was delayed. You borrowed $900 in April for your car. You borrowed again in June because rent was due and you didn't want your boyfriend to know you were behind. Which part was the joke?" Her face changed at the edges first. That was the thing about Talia. She trained her mouth better than her eyes. Her smile stayed up for one more second. But the panic had already surfaced. "You didn't have to say numbers," she snapped. "Exactly," I said. "You didn't have to toast me like I was your family charity case." A low murmur spread down the tables. My uncle stopped turning corn on the grill. One of my younger cousins stared at Talia the way kids stare when adults accidentally reveal they are not gods after all. My friend Kendra Mills, who came because she thought a lakeside picnic sounded peaceful, stood near the cooler with a paper plate in her hand and looked at me like she had just understood years of conversations I had never fully explained. Talia crossed her arms. "So now you want to meddle because you helped your sister a few times?" "No," I said. "I wanted basic respect. That would have cost you less." That landed harder than I expected. Even my father shifted in his chair. He had spent years mistaking my silence for resilience. To him, because I handled things, I must have needed nothing. Because Talia complained loudly, she must have needed more. That is how some families divide love. Not by fairness, but by who creates the most noise. Talia stepped closer. "Tell them the rest. Elise, tell them how you act like you're better than everybody because you have your little jobs and your saving spreadsheets and your thrift store clothes. You want everybody here to think you're some saint." I laughed once because the audacity was almost impressive. She had taken her dependence on me and translated it into my arrogance. "I restored damaged documents for the State Museum all day," I said. "Then I spend nights at a frame shop so I can keep my own life stable. I don't drink my paycheck. I don't lease luxury I can't afford. I don't insult people who cover for me." A hush passed across the yard again. But this one felt different. Not empty. Heavy. The kind that arrives when the room realizes it has been listening to the wrong person for years. Talia looked toward our parents. Waiting for rescue. That was when I knew she was more afraid than angry. People who feel powerful attack. People who feel exposed look for backup. My mother tried first. "Elise. Sweetheart. Enough." But her voice had lost authority. She sounded less like a parent and more like someone praying a fire would put itself out. My father cleared his throat. "This doesn't need to become a spectacle." I turned to him. "Then why was everybody comfortable when I was the spectacle 5 minutes ago?" He had no answer. He just looked toward the lake as if sunlight on the water might offer an escape route. Talia saw the hesitation and got reckless. "You're unbelievable," she said. "After everything this family has done for you. You stand here acting like a victim." That almost made me laugh again. Not because it was funny. Because it was shameless. What exactly has this family done for me? "Talia," I asked. "Say it clearly." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She was good at tone. Implication. Insult. Performance. She was weaker with facts. My Aunt Sharon jumped in from the far end of the table. "Your parents have always supported you girls equally." "Equally," I said. "That's interesting." I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the small accordion folder I carried, because I had stopped trusting my own family's version of history. Some people journal for healing. I keep records. When you spend your days preserving evidence, you stop treating memory like truth just because it sounds emotional. My mother saw the folder and said sharply, "Don't friend." "No," I said. "Today we do this properly." I opened the folder and took out printed transfers. Screenshots. And one handwritten note Talia left in my mailbox, begging me not to tell anyone she was short on rent again. I didn't wave them dramatically. I didn't shout. That would have let everyone dismiss me as emotional. I placed the papers on the table beside the potato salad like receipts arriving for a meal nobody wanted to pay for. February 12th. I said. $3,000. Memo line. Temporary. Don't tell Mom and Dad. I slid the next page forward. April 4th. $920 for your car repair. Another page. June 21st. $1,500 because your boyfriend thought you had already covered your half of rent. Another page. August 2nd. $800 for the destination bachelorette trip you swore you couldn't back out of because appearances mattered. Talia went white. Not embarrassed. White? One cousin whispered, "Oh my God." Loud enough for half the table to hear. My aunt stopped talking. My father stared at the papers like they were written in a language he hoped he would never learn. "You kept receipts?" Talia asked. "Of course I did," I said. "You taught me to know." That was the first truly honest sentence of the evening. I had not started my 20s suspicious. I became suspicious after too many stories changed when she retold them. After too many favors became proof that she was generous because she allowed me to help. After too many humiliations came, dressed as jokes. Kendra quietly moved from the cooler to stand near me. She didn't touch me or interrupt. She just stood there, which was somehow more powerful than all the speeches people could have made. Talia looked at our parents again. "Are you really going to let her do this?" she demanded. My father rubbed a hand over his jaw. "Did you borrow this money?" She hesitated. That was all the answer anybody needed. "That's private," she said finally. "No," I said. "It was private when I was protecting you. You made it public when you used me for a punchline." She took a step toward the papers and I put my hand over them. "Don't," I said quietly. "You've been rewriting me for years. You don't get to rewrite documents too." A few relatives looked down then. Ashamed. Not all of them. Some people will watch injustice for a decade. "Now tell me this. Once you heard the receipts and realized she borrowed money while calling me broke. What would you do next? Comment expose if you would lay out every receipt so no one can twist the story again. Or comment stop if you would cut it short to avoid tearing the family apart. Talia sensed the balance shifting. That was why her next move was so ugly. She looked at me and said, maybe if you weren't bitter about ending up alone, you wouldn't be this obsessed with money. The cruelty was deliberate. She knew exactly where to aim. I had ended an engagement years earlier after discovering my fiancé had opened a credit card in both our names, and expected me to absorb the debt because I was better with responsibility. Talia knew how painful that season had been, and she used it anyway, right there between paper plates and lemonade. I looked at her for a long moment. That's fine, I said. Keep talking. Her chin lifted, mistaking calm for weakness. No, really, she said. Tell them more. Tell them how miserable you are. Tell them why you can't stand seeing other people happy. Happy, I repeated. Talia, you aren't happy. You're expensive. That froze the yard again. My uncle coughed to hide a laugh. One cousin failed to hide it at all. Humiliation finally broke through Talia's polish. You jealous, bitter little. Finish that sentence, I said. And I'll read the text where you called me crying from the grocery store because your card declined and you said, please answer. You're the only one who ever fixes this. That did it. She stopped. For the first time in my adult life, my sister reached the edge of what performance could save. I should tell you something about humiliation in families. It rarely arrives as one big event. It is usually years of tiny permissions. One mean joke nobody corrects. One favor never repaid. One daughter praised for sparkle, while the other is praised for endurance. As if endurance is not neglected love wearing sturdy shoes. Standing there with receipts on a folding table and my sister shaking with anger, I understood I was not ending a single fight. I was ending a role. Here's what happens now, I said. Since we all like public statements so much, let's make one. From today forward, I am done covering your rent, your bills, your emergencies, your image, and your lies. Talia gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being exact. I held up one sheet. Total unpaid amount. From 24 that including what you promised to return last summer, is $7,280. My mother made a soft sound. My father looked at Talia with a kind of stunned disappointment I had never seen directed at her before. She saw it too, and it rattled her more than anything I had said. I was going to pay it back, she said. When? I asked. After the next brunch. After the next lease renewal. After the next thing you post to look like you're thriving. My mother said my name, but there was no conviction in it. Then someone else stepped into the blast zone. Owen Caldwell, Talia's boyfriend, walked over from the grill with a plate in his hand. He had been avoiding the center of the drama like a man trying not to step on a landmine. Wait, he said slowly. You told me your bonus covered the back rent. Talia turned toward him fast. This is not the time. Actually, he said. It seems like exactly the time. That changed everything. Until then, Talia had still been fighting me from high ground. Now someone from her carefully managed life discovered he had been standing on cardboard scenery. You lied to me, he said. Don't do this here, she hissed. I almost pitied her then. Almost. But pity is dangerous when you have spent years confusing it with obligation. You lied to everyone, I said, and every time I stayed quiet. You used my silence to build a better version of yourself. She pointed at me. You love this. You love making me look bad. No, I said. You did the looking bad part yourself. I just stopped editing. My father stood up. He wasn't a large man, but he looked older in that moment. Not weak, just tired. Tired in the way people look when they realize their comfort has been financed by someone else's restraint. Talia, he said, is the number real? She hesitated again. That was enough. That means yes, I said. My aunt tried to rescue the mood with, families help each other. I looked right at her. Families don't mock the person helping them and call it a toast. That shut her up. Owen stepped back from Talia, as if he physically needed distance to think. You told me Elise was always asking for help, he said quietly. You told me she was irresponsible. Talia opened her mouth, but there was nothing left that sounded believable. And then the first real consequence landed. Not in private, but in front of everybody. People began to move away from her. Not dramatically. Just enough. A cousin drifted toward the drinks table. My aunt sat down and stared at her lap. My mother stopped trying to soothe. My father stopped defending the peace at all costs. Talia was still in the middle of the yard, but she was suddenly alone. Be honest. When the boyfriend finally realizes he was lied to. What should happen next? Comment truth if you think he deserves the full story right now. Or comment private if you think it should be handled later away from everyone. I gathered the papers back into a neat stack. I'll send you a repayment schedule, I said. If you ignore it, I'll consider the money a lesson fee and I will never answer another emergency call from you again. She stared at me. You'd cut off your own sister. I'd stop funding my own humiliation, I said. Then I looked at my parents. And before either of you asks me to be the bigger person, don't. I have been the bigger person so long you all mistook it for my permanent shape. Nobody spoke. Somewhere behind us, one of the kids asked if dessert was ready, which felt almost absurdly normal. That is what family ruptures are like. The world doesn't stop. It just reveals itself. People started leaving early after that. A picnic built on appearances cannot survive truth for long. As relatives folded chairs and loaded coolers, I caught fragments of the new story spreading in low voices. I had no idea. 7,000. She called Elise broke. That's insane. It wasn't everyone suddenly joining my side. Real life is slower than that. Some still thought I went too far. Some believed the old family religion that public peace matters more than private fairness. But the spell had broken, and once a family spell breaks, it rarely returns the same way. Later, when most people were gone and the lake had turned dark, my parents stood near the patio waiting for me. I could tell by the shape of their silence that the second part of the night had arrived. Not the public one. The honest one. My mother folded and unfolded a paper napkin in her lap. You blindsided us, she said. Not. We failed you. Not. We should have seen it. Blindsided us. As if the true injury was their late arrival to the truth. No, I said. I've been signaling for years. You just didn't want to read it. My father looked toward the house. How long has this been going on? Depends what you mean. I said. The borrowing. About 4 years. The insults. Longer. The expectation that I'll absorb whatever she creates. Most of my adult life. My mother's eyes filled. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I did, I said. Just not in ways you respected. Every time I said I was tired, I got told she was stressed. Every time I said she was cruel, I got told she didn't mean it. You didn't hear me because the role you gave me was useful. That landed. My parents had loved me. I do believe that. But they loved me lazily. They loved the version of me that solved, absorbed, forgave, and never demanded an audit of the emotional economy. Once I stopped being that version, they were forced to meet the actual daughter in front of them. My mother whispered, "We thought Talia needed more support." That's not the compliment you think it is. I said, all it means is you taught her that difficulty gets rewarded. My father shut his eyes for a moment, and you were easier. Yes, I said. So you managed me by giving me less. Neither denied it. That was the first honest gift they'd given me in years. My mother wiped her face. What do you need from us now? That was the best question of the night, because it was the first one that centered my reality instead of their discomfort. I answered slowly. Stop asking me to fix her. Stop asking me to forgive quickly just because the house feels tense. If she insults me again in front of you, address it immediately. And don't confuse access to me with entitlement to me. My father nodded. That's fair. It's necessary, I said. He asked, do you want us to make her repay you? Yes, I said. Not because I need every dollar to survive, but because I need the debt acknowledged. The lie has been expensive in more than one way. My father leaned back. Then she will repay you. And if she needs to change her lifestyle, then she changes it. My mother nodded shakily. No more rescuing. A long silence settled. But it wasn't the old kind stuffed with avoidance. This one had work inside it. Then my mother said, I think we made a habit of admiring Talia's shine and relying on your structure. I looked at her. That is the most honest sentence you've said all year. My father laughed once. Bitter. Structure doesn't sparkle. So we took it for granted. Exactly. I said. Public truth runs on adrenaline. Private truth runs on grief. I felt my hands start to shake. And I folded them in my lap so they wouldn't see. I love you both, I said. But I'm not doing this anymore. If the only way to stay close to this family is to keep getting diminished, then distance will be healthier than closeness. My mother reached for my hand, then stopped halfway, asking without words. I let her take it, not because everything was fixed, because boundaries aren't walls when used properly. They are doors with locks. And for the first time, I finally had my hand on the key. Later, Talia came back outside with her mascara smudged, and her anger rearranged into wounded pride. Owen was with her, but he stood a little apart, as though proximity had become a decision instead of a habit. My parents looked at her differently now. That was the quiet miracle of the night. Not that they stopped loving her. Parents rarely do. The miracle was that love finally stopped blinding them. You owe Elise an apology, my mother said. Talia gave a laugh with no humor. So this is a tribunal langs pata. No, I said. It's the first normal conversation this family has had about your behavior in years. My father cut in. Calm but firm. It was not a joke. It was mean. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Talia stared at him like he'd switched languages. My mother added. And the money is debt. Debt. Not favor. Not support. Not a temporary thing between sisters. Debt. That label stripped years of pretty storytelling off what she'd done. Owen asked quietly, Did you tell me you covered the rent? Silence. Did you tell your parents Elise was always asking for help? Silence again. He exhaled slowly. I'm going home. Talia snapped. Seriously? Yes, he said. Because I don't know which part is worse. The debt, the lying, or the way you publicly tore down the person who covered for you. He looked at me once. I'm sorry I believed it. Then he left. And for the first time, Talia looked small. Not innocent. Just separated from protection. My mother said, Apologize properly. Talia stared at me with wet eyes full of anger, shame, and stubbornness. I'm sorry, she said flatly. My father shook his head. Try again. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, her voice was different. Lower. Less polished. I'm sorry I used you, she said. I'm sorry I kept taking your help and then acting like you were beneath me. I'm sorry I lied to Owen. And I'm sorry I made you look like the problem. The yard was quiet. Not because everyone was shocked. Because everyone finally understood what the silence had been buying them for years. And what it would cost now that I stopped paying. If you want more real stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next one will hit even harder.